All right, welcome CvCISO podcast listeners. This is episode 24. I don't know if you follow us enough to know that we were counting an episode behind. I'm not going to blame anybody, Meg, but it's just what happens. So here we are, episode 24. No, I was just saying Meg is here too. So Meg, welcome. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Don't say it like that. No, you say it like that. That's awesome.
Hello.
And Jordon?
Hello.
Jordan's here too.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Barry White. Yeah, we got a new audio set up here. Okay. So happy that, we every time before we start the show, we sometimes just talk with each other. It's one of those things, like every Friday morning, I look forward to this. Yeah, that's when we record these. I look forward to catching up with you two because you're uplifting. You laugh at my stupid jokes, which makes me feel better about myself. You can just kind of say whatever's on your mind. So we end up spending 30 minutes sometimes just catching up. So I love that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good way to start Friday.
Part of the podcast now. It's just not recorded.
Well, and I was thinking maybe we'll start recording it. Start recording just some of the banter. I mean, sometimes we say some things that we probably don't want recorded. Sometimes my filter doesn't work. One of the best pieces of advice, and you can take this as advice, I think, as a vCISO, one of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor coming up over the years was always consider your audience. So when you talk to people, you consider your audience. Sometimes it comes naturally. Sometimes you actually have to think about it. So like there are words, there are phrases that I would say to you guys that I would never say to the general public. It's not that you're not being transparent. You have to consider the audience. Like people are going to get really pissed off if I say this word outside,
Especially today, like we're so sensitive as a society.
Right.
Anymore. Just a lot of sensitivity.
I don't want to go on a rabbit trail. This is a topic maybe for another show, but
we can do it on this show.
Conversational intelligence. I brought it up before. I'm reading that book, and you guys are making me think about it because it's such an interesting thing about the chemical reactions that people's brains have by just the words that we use, and more than that. But like it one of the key points is that it all comes down to trust. It accesses that part of your brain, I'm going to butcher it, but the limbic, whatever, where it's like your fight or flight or part. And
right.
so there's words that, when you don't have trust, just gets you down there, and then, people react.
What if
at a chemical level?
If there was like some brain surgeon or somebody who listens to, happen to be listening to our podcast and like the brain part amygdala or something.
Limbic. We don't claim to be a, biology show here.
No. I love that though. It's just, that flipping thing back there. I don't know. But there's a lot to this because, so it's so important for us as vCISOs. And I think we'll just use this as a topic. You know what I mean? There's a couple of skill sets. I mean, if people are paying attention, there's a couple of skill sets that we've already demonstrated right here. One is our ability to adapt, right? We had coming to this show, I didn't even actually have a topic. This is my week. And I was like, all right, well, let's do this. And you guys are like, okay. But now we're going to adapt. We're going to change, I think, and we can talk about the other topic later, because the other topic was just exploring this vCISO thing more, right? Looking at it from a different perspective. But I like this conversational thing too, because I run into it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, because I'm a guy who I like to say what's on my mind. It's like a mental health thing. If I don't, if I feel like I have to say what somebody else wants me to say versus what I really want to say, it doesn't, I can't do it sometimes. Yep. I mean, it just hurts to not do it. And
I'm the way, Evan.
Yeah.
Like it's almost, I feel like it's actually affected me professionally.
Yeah.
Because I have, when I have a hard time like trying to figure out like what am I supposed to say? What am I, when I'm feeling like I just want to say this,
Yeah.
what the heck? And
Yeah.
but then I've got to like put it through all these filters and then it gets confusing.
Well, and as a friend of yours, Meg, I've seen you struggle with that,
Yeah.
firsthand.
Yeah.
Because you've said it to me before, like, what am I supposed to say?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, the right answer, and I mean, it's easy to say it. It's harder to do it. Like, well, you're supposed to say what you want to say.
Right.
But in a lot of places, you'll get beat up. You'll get cut
Right.
up for saying what you want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do you,
Well,
how do you navigate that?
There is a learned skill of saying what you want to say with the right amount of empathy without getting to a place where you're like tripping over your words. That's the place where we don't want to be, where you're like,
Right.
you can't even talk. So you talk like a baby because you're trying to process all the words you're not supposed to use and stuff. But then also so when you're considering your audience, it is important. And then you get into a place though too, where if you do say something that triggers that other person, I just went through this the other day, you almost knew it. You said something and you kind of knew that the word you use or whatever could be taken a weird way. And sure enough, they took it that weird way rather than the benefit of the doubt and taking it with the, best of intentions. And they took it the weird way and then they reacted that way. And then you get in that weird place of trying, now what do you do? Like you're trying to like, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. And then the whole conversation's all blown up just because now you're feeling weird and they're feeling weird and the conversation didn't even go to the place it was supposed to go.
Well, you see, that's the weird thing. And then you're the one apologizing for the way they interpreted something you said, not the intent of what you said. If you actually took the time to understand the intent of what I just said, you would have understood that this was humor, that this was actually the way I'm using this word is actually uplifting. That's the intent behind it. Because so many words you can take, like swear words, for instance. I swear. I grew up in a military household. I grew up where swear words were just part of the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
The way you use them might be offensive, but the swear word itself was not offensive. Right? So if I say, holy fuck, you're like, that's like, wow, I'm excited. That's amazing, maybe. Whereas if I say, hey, fuck you, that's usually offensive, right? So I think people, because you can even say that in a boardroom. I don't know if you've ever, you presenting, maybe not. You have to understand the audience. Like, am I part of this group or am I an outsider to this group? Because they all swear too. You know what I mean? It's so there's a lot that goes into one, understanding the audience, and then understanding my standing with this audience, right? And like you said, if there's trust and there's credibility in that relationship, I think you can get away with saying things a lot differently than somebody who doesn't have that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to there was like 5 college students at the end of Hacks and Hops last week, and we were just talking, and they struggle with I think this is what they were telling me. They were struggling with kind of getting their own point across about other people seeing value in them and the contributions they can make, and they were scared. One of them, and scared might be a strong word, but they were, because I told them you need to build a portfolio of things that you can do, right? So that you can show off, right? Things that you've created, things that you've done, because you've got the academic stuff, but you need to have the practical stuff. That's what people are going to hire you for. And so I gave them some examples, and they're like, but I'm afraid of what other people are going to think about it. I don't want people to say, oh, that's crappy or whatever. And so I said, well, and I brought it back to that circles thing. There are circles, right? And most of those people aren't in your circle, so who cares what they think?
Yeah.
And I think the way this applies too is with communication is a lot of times we're so concerned about what other people think about us when it doesn't matter what they think about us. What I care about is what you guys think about me. You're in one of my circles. I don't care about, what the general public thinks about me. I don't care what social media thinks about me. It's Jesus, my wife, my family, my friends, my close associates, and kind of everybody else.
Yeah.
And
I heard
You have to.
Aaron Rodgers say, I saw like a motivational video he did where he said, you don't have to, take criticism from someone you never would have asked for advice from.
right?
No,
People will criticize you all the time, but
Yeah.
if you wouldn't ask them for advice, then what does it matter?
Right. I was in the truck yesterday coming back from picking Ryan up at the airport. And we were talking about the podcast, last night about what, and I told him no rules. There are no rules for this podcast. I want you to say what you want to say. I want to say what I want to say. That's part of the podcast, is just being free. It's good for your mental health to be authentic. You don't realize unless you have been authentic, you don't realize the freeing feeling you get by being authentic. And that includes in the things you say. And so I gave him, it's like, anything? I'm like, yeah, anything. And so we started like just kind of joking around. And he's like, oh, I said something. He's like, that's offensive. I'm like, to you, right? The thing is, it was a joke. It was a joke about, I don't know what it was. It's like joke about, well, there's another example. It's along the same lines. We made a joke about that I heard from Mexicans. I live in Mexico. They tell me this joke. We're laughing. It's hilarious. I go back to the United States and I tell that same joke, and they're offended. And I'm like, you realize that you're a white man and you're offended by this Mexican joke when the Mexicans are the ones who told me this joke.
Yeah.
right.
You know what I mean? So how often are we just offended for the sense of being offended, or we feel like it's our job to be offended on behalf of somebody else? Like they can't defend themselves.
Isn't that all part of the cancel culture though?
I don't know.
Has kind of come about in society. It's just
the
offendability of everything. And
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And it permeates into our jobs as VCISOs too. Right? I mean, when we teach in the VCISO class, the CvCISO course, to get to know your audience, get to know them first, right? I think that's module 3 of the training. Do some OSINT on them. A lot of it's this, right? Like, I need to understand my audience and I need to get my message across that that's not going to be offensive to them.
Right.
Right. If, another guy who's down here is John Kittleson. He works at a company that's like super progressive, woke. Right. And if you know John's very anti that. Right. So he's like a fish out of water at company, which I think is funny, because he's young and it's fun to watch your friends get beat up once in a while. At least he's got a job.
Well, it was like for me in K-12.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that society, it was just, very different.
It is, I think we are zeroing in on that key point of trust, because I think there is something where when you don't know your audience and you haven't established trust yet, like, because there are people that want to speak their mind, they want to be authentic, but they're like a bull in a china shop, right? Like it's more like, I don't care about your feelings. I'm just going to say whatever I want, and it's, whatever, I can do this. And then there's maybe a little more tact that is, I don't have trust right now, so I can maybe ease my way into what, to revealing myself. Because I don't know that, when you're being vulnerable too, like we were talking about vulnerability, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you just walk around being like laying everything on the floor all the time. And there's kind of not a tiptoe as in like walking on eggshells, but kind of a slow progression.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think effective communicators, we have to have empathy. We have to try to see the world from their perspective, right? Because there's a reason why. Because you can just, I think in communications, like we just don't see things the same way. The way I want to communicate isn't a way that you receive the communication well, and And so you can just continue to try to fight that fight, or you can try to figure out, like, how do you resolve this? And I think you can wait for them to show empathy and try to see things from your perspective, or you could take the initiative and, like, why do you see it like this? You know, try to put yourself into their shoes, you know, try to figure out, you know, they were raised differently. They were, you know, something, right? Because they have this worldview, they have this way that they see the world. And these things might be like the way I speak, like where I come from. Like I said, I grew up in a military household, all this stuff, swear words were just swear words. We use them all the time. You grew up in, you know, some household that was completely the opposite of that, like super proper, maybe very religious, where like there are words you never use in this damn house. I mean, this house, you know? And so, you know, trying to figure out that. And like you said, there's an art to saying what you want to say in the right manner, I think, showing respect. You know, like if I'm in a locker room, you know, locker room talk would offend anybody outside of that locker room, probably, you know, but I'm in the locker room.
Right.
Yeah, I've
I do
talked to
think
my
you have
wife
to
much
keep,
different than I do anybody else. Yeah. Go ahead, Meg.
I
Sorry.
do think you have to keep, I do think it's a little different when it comes to work,
Sure.
you know, because you can't, I mean, I've just found that I can't always just be authentic, because you have to kind of put it in a box, you know,
Yeah.
with parameters. And it's fine. It's mastering the art of that.
Yeah.
Still being yourself, but also understanding that there's parameters.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And where do those parameters come from, and how do you recognize them? Because there are things, even in this discussion with you guys. I mean, you guys are close to me. You know, we've known each other for a while, and there are things I would say to you that I wouldn't say to other people in the public, but there are also things that I would say amongst a group of locker room friends that I wouldn't say here. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's interesting. How do you figure out where that is? Because I think even as a, you know, on the job as a CvCISO, it's very important to be authentic, but with, you know, boundaries.
But not professional. To me, it's just a professionalism thing.
And
like
it's
understanding.
It's hard because parameters move, you know, these days too. I mean, and I do like promoting a world where people can truly just say what they want, you know, as long as it's respectful and kind, and like, professional is even a weird word where it's like, well, what do we mean by that? Like, are we suppressing just, we can't laugh? Like some people would say, oh, you can't, you know, laugh at farts because if you're professional, but everyone laughs at farts. So, we were on a huddle call with our company before, it was a while ago now, but someone said we have one person who's very bubbly, very positive and stuff. And she said, I love you guys. And we got a note later on from someone that said they didn't like they don't like when people say I love you, makes them uncomfortable. And so the parameters, like, what are the parameters? You can't even say I love you. It's something like you can't even.
Right.
That goes to the point of it only takes one to ruin it for many, because probably 99% of the people on that call didn't have a feeling about that other than something positive.
Right.
But it takes the one complaint.
Well, what about that one? Because we've had that, you know, numerous times too. And a lot of times, you know, on the surface, there's just so much that happens, you know, behind the scenes, in your brain, you know, what you interpreted that to mean. And well, what we've usually done, I think, is, you know, I had one-on-one with that person who was offended. Now, assuming that we know who that is, because a lot of places you have these anonymous tip lines and things, you know, where, because we want people to be able to give us this feedback and input without any fear of, you know, something's going to happen, right? You're not going to get your promotion or whatever. And so I think, yeah, that's a tough one, because when you do have the conversation with the person that was offended and that you explain to them what this actually means, right? Because just the word love, give me a definition of love. Some people think that love must mean sexual. No, I mean, there is that kind of love. It's more lustful, but there's the agape kind of love is the love, the giving love, right? The I want what's best for you love. It has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with anything inappropriate. It's all good. And I can't imagine anybody would be offended by that.
Right.
Oh, you want what's best for me? Like, you want to give me things without strings attached? Do you want to, you know what I mean? You want to
But you're
invest
right.
in me?
There's something in their past, like even with them, that you just don't know. Maybe someone used that word to manipulate them in a relationship before, or they're going through abuse and things. It's like you do still have to have compassion for that person. It's like they've been through something that makes the word love not even become offensive.
Yeah. At some point, from a leadership perspective, it's like, I'm not going to sacrifice the benefits that the team receives from that at the expense of one person who misunderstands it or misreceives it. I think when you can explain it, explain those things, then I think you're completely, defensible, and maybe help this person who is offended. Maybe there's something we can do to help you navigate this, cope with it, whatever, right? It might be a personal issue that I have no business knowing. What I see is what you're bringing into the company. What you're bringing here is unhealthy for the company. What you think this love was unhealthy for the company, in fact, it's very, very healthy for the company. In truth, which we need, it's all about the truth, right? In truth, your offense at this is actually unhealthy for the company. And obviously you're going to have to get to a spot, because nobody wants to be told that your offense is unhealthy.
Right. I was going to say, it takes courage as a leader to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And
I
think that that's probably why people steer away from those conversations and just then make the policy, if you will. We're not going to mention that we love people in meetings, because of the courage it would take to have that pointed conversation with the one person who's offended.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. But I think you can get to the bottom of, because I think it's the offense is not never, but it's rarely just binary. It's rarely I'm just offended. Well, there's more to it. You remember some of us, when we grew up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, kind of thing. I think I hold on to that. I don't even realize how hard I hold on to that, but there's lots of things that people say about me that I don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care what you say, and if you want me to care, well, then be my friend. If you actually want me to care, take the time to be my friend, because now you're in a circle and now I will care.
Yeah.
But outside of that circle, if you don't know, because most of the things, that you're offended by, you have no context. You have no background. If you did know any of those things, you would know that there's nothing offensive here, even in the jokes that you say. So it's, we were also talking about, because there's so many things that are like so taboo in our world. I was talking with a friend. I was talking about talking to a friend about the N-word. Right. And that's a word, because I'm like also a guy, like I don't like just leaving things like, well, you just can't do this. And we need to explore more why, I don't use that word because I don't want to offend people, not purposefully. When I do use offensive stances and things, usually it's to get a point across. Now, using the N-word, I can't really figure out the right it wouldn't fit a point that I'm trying to make. You know
Right.
what I mean? If it did, then maybe I would use it. But just exploring, like, why is it offensive? Who's it offensive to? You know, why did these words become words you can't use anymore? There was something that somebody said to me, or maybe I read it somewhere, the difference between hate speech and speech that you hate. There's a big difference. You know, hate speech would mean, you know, trying to hurt people with the words I'm using. You know, even then, you know, how much power are you going to give those people, you know, to tear me down with the words you're using? But I understand, you know, when you get a massive group, you know, like social media is kind of, in my opinion, kind of evil. When you have 1 million people throwing shit at you, that probably hurts.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what that would feel like. So that's the hate speech. But speech that you hate is speech that I disagree with. Like, I think it's stupid. But you still got to have it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's part of their perspective. I like having
And-
discussions with people different, and I'm weird like this, different political persuasions, because I want to understand it. But they immediately, a lot of times you immediately get defensive. Like, why are you asking me questions about who? Because I want to know. I'm not attacking you.
Yeah, it does have a lot to do. I wish I was done with the book, because, you know, maybe we'll continue this topic. But like the brain stuff, when you understand the chemicals that are going on, and you don't even have to think about it from a brain level. People understand this. Like, you know, when you get into that fight or flight mode, and it's just a chemical place in your brain, though, that you're at, and they're at. And the goal is, when I was telling some of our team about conversational intelligence, you know, some of the things I find interesting about it. One of the guys said, so about how to manipulate people. And I was like, I mean, maybe, but like, that's not really what it's about. It's about getting people to the executive function of your brain. You want to be operating at the executive function of your brain. You want the person you're talking with to be there. If you have them down in their, you know, whatever I called it, limerick, whatever. If they're down there and they're in the untrust, like fight or flight, you're not going to have a good conversation. You're not going to solve problems. So understanding language to use, which might mean that, refraining some words. If you start to understand that audience, knowing that word's going to trigger them, and I won't be able to have a healthy conversation with them anymore. You know, you can, but at the same time, as a receiver of someone talking, put that into practice too. Like, understand when you're in the wrong part of your brain where you're not going to make a great conversation, get yourself to the executive function. So you're making decisions, thinking strategically, allowing information, you know, without fighting.
Right. And I think seeking the intent rather than jumping, you know, you mentioned something earlier, and I don't know if people picked up on it, but you mentioned benefit of the doubt. You know, if we all practiced giving people the benefit of the doubt more often, you know, so like a word, well, this word could be taken different ways. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. That would then lead to more discovery. Like, did you mean this? Is this what you meant by that? Versus that immediate, like, emotional reaction of like, jackass. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of emotional intelligence that comes in with this too. My own mother, a while back, she called me an intolerant bigot. And I was like,
nice.
okay, from my own mom. I'm an only child. Okay.
So those are two words that get thrown around a lot.
Well, I know. And so I asked her, it's just an example of giving her the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, I'm not sure you're using those words correctly. You know, and I'd like to explore it with you. Like, and maybe from your perspective, you used it right, and I am a bigot. Like, holy shit, I better change then. So, you know, like, what's bigot? You know, and so we defined it together. I'm like, so I'm that? She's like, well, no. Okay. And then intolerance, like, I think right now, just this discussion shows that I'm not intolerant. It's like, yeah. I go, so did you really mean that? She's like, no, I don't think I chose the right words. Like, I'm like, I didn't think so, but you know, I wanted to explore it because I think you have to be vulnerable but to go through that type of, because you need to be willing to find out that maybe you're right. Or maybe I really am a bigot and I didn't know it. And I don't want to be a bigot. Maybe you want to be a bigot. I don't know. But so there's that. But before you can even go there, I think you have to have this sense of security about yourself.
Yeah.
Like to be able to like, what if she is right? What if I really am a bigot? Is that going to destroy me, or am I going to, be able to, am I solid enough in who I actually am to be able to maybe adjust to it? I don't know. It's, but I see a lot of people who use words, and I'm probably guilty too, just sloppily. They just throw them around. Don't even know what the hell it means. Like if I don't agree with, some liberal stance, because I'm traditionally in the spectrum of political, I'm not in a bucket. Anybody who knows me knows I don't fit in a damn bucket. I'm so all over the damn place. It would have to be 1,000 buckets in all kinds of different places for me to fit in a bucket. But from a political standpoint, generally, I'm more conservative. But I also really appreciate the less conservative, because the more perspectives you open yourself up to, the more things that, more people, it just enriches your life. You see things from different angles until it gets to a point where it's just completely irrational. You know what I mean? There's like this rationality that you have to stick within this rational kind of reality thing. But we use words all the time. I've been called so many words. And I like to always think of it that way. Like, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you didn't actually call me that, because you didn't know what that word actually means. And if you did, great. Let's explore that together, because maybe you're right. Maybe I am fascist, intolerant, white supremacist, bigot. I have no idea. All I know is what I see. You know what I mean? I do know I'm not any of those things. Because that was another thing we had to deal with. We're so quick to judge, right? We're so quick to judge. And the same thing will happen with you as a CvCISO. When you're in front of people that you don't know, we're also quick to judge, right? And like, if you look at me, I have a long beard, no hair on top of my head. I have tattoos. When I was living in the United States, I had a gun. I drove a pickup truck. I ride Harleys. What does that tell you? If you're going to judge me as a book, judge a book by its cover.
Right.
It tells you, so right-wing, white supremacist, where's your towel on your head kind of guy. And it's like 100% not that. This is, you know what I mean? So you have to take the time to give people the benefit of the doubt, to listen, process, not immediately jump to some emotional response.
Right.
And think about how quick they get to a place where they're like, it's not even, it's like, you're a bigot. They're saying who you are. And like, that's the dangerous thing too, that is happening all over the place, rather than saying, maybe it would be true to say, like, I feel that your opinion on this matter is somewhat bigoted, but we immediately, like, one thing, you are this now.
Yeah.
And you can't change. And then we get this idea that people can't change. People can freaking change. You kidding me? I change my opinion all the time. There's things I do all the time that I'm like, I gotta get better at that. I gotta work at be better at that. People change all the time. And
I changed my opinion.
Gave us a lie that nobody can change.
I change my opinion like I change my underwear once a week, dog. Oh, wait. Okay, that
You wear underwear?
Wait, let me back that up. Let me back that up. Well, in another word that you said, and this is part of active listening too, by the way, it's hearing what people are actually saying. Because you mentioned that employee who asked or implied potentially, or maybe just outright said it, that you were manipulating. Now, let's explore that. Did you really mean manipulating, or did you mean influencing? Right. Those are two totally different things. Manipulation is about control. It is about deception. It is about getting you to do things that are in my best interest, maybe not yours. That's manipulation. Influence is really close to that, because it uses a lot of the same techniques, but what influence actually is what's best for you.
Okay.
It's mutual benefit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've had that a lot before too. I don't know. I'm just weird because I like to know why people use the words they use. Like, that's why I'm so literal on that information security thing, right? Versus cybersecurity. Though they are really two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to refer to influence as manipulation, let's just be clear that those are, the world defines those as two different words. But if you want to use manipulation in place of influence, let's just level set on what that means,
Yeah.
It's weird that, because I think it benefits us as vCISOs in trying to get our point across, that I need to use the words correctly. You always need to be ready to defend your point. And when you're communicating with other people and you're going through this same process of just exploring what do you actually mean, we're so damn transactional nowadays that we're so quick to judge, as opposed to establishing some sort of relationship. Like, are you actually using this word right? I mean, to question and explore these things together. But as a vCISO, you'll run into these same, like, quick to judge. It's difficult sometimes to deliver messages to people that they don't want to hear. You can't shy away from it. Otherwise, you're a shitty vCISO.
Yeah.
I mean, you get paid to do it right.
When I was actively teaching, or even when I was coaching other teachers, questioning strategies became really important, because for me, it was about, asking the questions that can pull information out of people to leave the ambiguity out the door,
Mhm.
And I think questioning techniques, because you've simulated some here, Evan, just how to ask questions to really get to the bottom of something, to really make sure that we're all saying the same thing and that we're interpreting it the same way. And I
think you have to put the emotion aside a lot, right? The worst, as I was thinking about, how I make decisions, it's a mix of emotion and logic. They have to play well together. And when one is trumping the other, like, there's more emotion than logic, I usually make regrettable decisions and say regrettable things. Think of a heated argument with your spouse or partner or boyfriend, whatever. And you're in that heated argument and emotions are running really high and you say a whole bunch of crap that you wish you didn't say.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're so, like, in your own little hole that you don't even recognize that. But it's happened to me many times. And I think, like, if you just give it a little bit of time to let the logic come back into the game, and then you think it through, like, okay, it's probably not a good idea to call my wife a bitch.
Probably
Logic
not.
would tell you that. Emotions won't tell you that. Emotions are like, you're angry. She didn't do whatever the hell she was supposed to do and whatever. The same thing happens when you have these conversations with people. It makes it easier, actually, for me when I think of the circles. Like, if somebody isn't my wife, that's why it evokes so much emotion to me, because what she says really matters. She can tear me down. No matter how tough I think I am, she can tear me down in a heartbeat. Somebody who's not in one of those circles, it makes it easier for me not to get as emotional.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter what you say. So it makes it easier for me to have these discussions like, did you really mean that? Did you really mean I'm a bigot? Because I want to explore that and I want to understand your perspective on that, because maybe that's the vibe I'm giving off too. So.
And if that's the vibe I'm giving off, then obviously I don't want to be perceived as that. So what do I need to do differently so I'm not perceived as a bigot?
Absolutely. Especially if what I'm striving for is transparency. I'm striving for being authentic.
Yeah.
If me being authentic is you're interpreting it that way, well, then something's off in my authenticity, potentially.
Yeah.
Do you think that for vCISOs, do you think that, like, as we talk about this, it's a fun conversation,
Mhm.
And there are people that are probably like really would be geeking out about this and going, yeah, I mean, let's dive into how we can, talk about the stuff and earn trust, be vulnerable, and all this. But there's probably a lot of people too that are just like, man, this sounds too complicated. It sounds like a lot of work to try to think about all these things while you're just trying to have a conversation with, prospect or your latest client, and what do you think about that? What would you say to someone like that?
I think it's well worth the effort because we gave more personal benefit examples than we did vCISO benefit examples. And I think if anything, it drives home the point that the person you are at work is not supposed to be different than the person you are at home.
Mhm.
So these relationship, these communication skills, if you don't want to put the effort in as a vCISO because it's too much work or it's too complicated, it's actually an investment in yourself, right? It's an investment in your relationships at home with my own mother, for crying out loud, my kids. It's the same thing, right? Learning how to communicate well, giving people the benefit of the doubt, exploring where there's differences of opinion. It's a skill that can be learned, and you're going to screw it up. So what?
Right.
Then put them outside of your circles,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
and move on to the next one.
Great point.
The last thing you want to do is try to be somebody you're not, man. That's going to kill you.
Right.
That's maybe what it comes down to. And I feel like it's a repeated lesson, which, sometimes you got to repeat lessons over. I know I need to hear them over and over again to remind myself. But like, if someone is kind of thinking, oh man, that sounds very complicated, because maybe they're looking at it a little too tactical and like, okay, so I got to not do this, not do this, and I can't keep it all straight. At the end of the day, what you're saying, be yourself.
Yourself.
It work to be okay with being yourself and facing yourself in the mirror and asking yourself the bad questions. Because if you're an asshole at home, you're an asshole. Like,
Right. Right.
putting on a mask to pretend you're not a bigot doesn't change that. So, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I love the way you summarize that because I think it is true. It's work on being the best you can be.
Yeah.
Authentically. Be yourself. And that will roll into being a better vCISO, to roll into being better, on whatever sports balling team you're playing, whatever. It'll be everything in your life. And it just shows that you can't separate information security. I mean, you can give thousands, millions of examples of how you can't separate information security from life, everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't even worry about, well, how can I apply all this stuff as a vCISO? What I would do is spend more time applying it to yourself, learning your own life skills, opening yourself up for criticism, finding confidence in yourself that you are a good person. And it doesn't matter if so-and-so didn't like the word you said. That doesn't make you a bad person. Don't let that tear you down. Don't let that change you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Find you, and you'll kick ass as a vCISO on this part of it. Otherwise, if you try to take the tactical things, you'll never end the list. It's way too many things,
It's also too complicated to be a chameleon where you're just trying to, be whatever environment you're in instead of just being authentically you. That can be taxing.
Feel comfortable with people not liking you.
Yeah. There's like, I just read a quote from, I think it was Mark Twain, with something like, if you don't lie, then you have less to remember, or something like that. I can't, I'm butchering it. Tell the truth, then you don't have to worry about remembering a bunch of things.
Right.
Yeah.
If you be you, then you don't have to be worried about like, oh, what do I have to put on today?
Yep.
It's a freeing experience, man, because you just do what you do. You know what I mean? And there's like, I mean, you think of like, there was a group, I'm trying to think if this story's too long, but one of the things that a lot of men struggle with is pornography, right? And people don't talk about it. Why don't they talk about it? I don't know. Probably because they're doing it, honestly. I mean, people don't talk about things normally, about the things that they're struggling, right? And
Yeah.
so I knew about this, and so I did a bunch of research on what does it do to marriages,
Mm.
because I was in a marriage small group, and I had a group of like six, was it? I don't know, 6 to 8 other couples in this group. And I love these people, man. These are my friends. You grow these deep bonds. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned about this from a book that I had picked up. It was called Born Again Christian. That was the name of the book. And so I was like, and according to studies, it was like some like 80 or 85% of men struggle with this.
Sounds low to me.
I know. And so I was like, in my small group, let's say there was 8. I think there were 8 at the time. That meant like 6 in my group, in my little group here. And I wasn't because, and there's a long story behind why I wasn't. I was actually molested as a child, by my uncle. So sex took a whole different way. And this is weird how we're ending the podcast this way. But anyway, the point was this honesty thing and investing in yourself. So I was like, oh, this will be great. We can learn together. So I bought 8 copies of that book. And I said, why don't we separate from the women and go discover this together and figure out ways, because it destroys your marriage. It destroys things. And who wants that? And so the first group, so we went to a separate place, so we could talk openly as men, whatever. And the first meeting, everybody showed up. It's like, awesome, keep going. The second one, me and one other person showed up.
Really?
And I was like, I wonder if that was the 6, that were struggling. But that's the thing. I mean, and the point of not being like bound by these things, just the freedom of like, it's out in the open, what I am, who I am. Obviously there are things that, you keep private, you keep separate, but you walk every day knowing I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. This is who I am. This is what I did today. You know what I mean? There's no ulterior motive. There's nothing, well, when's the other shoe going to drop? There isn't another shoe. I'm a one-footed weirdo. Or I just wear one shoe. I lost the other shoe. Maybe the dog took it. I don't know.
Honestly, Evan, I think you're a minority. I just do. I think you are unapologetically you. And I don't think many people are that way. It's not common to find somebody who is truly just authentically themselves.
Well, hopefully.
That's my opinion.
So do you think on that point, do you think it's helpful to share like this? Do you think it's inspirational to people? Do you think they find value in it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
okay,
for sure.
I think there's a lot of when I mean, I feel it every time you talk too. It's motivating. It's like, man, I wish I could just talk about stuff like that. And it's not, it is something that I think people resonate with and immediately start thinking, I want to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And I think it's healthy, isn't it? Don't you think?
Absolutely.
To be more transparent, to be more open, to be more you.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it starts, I've said this before, I think it starts, maybe it doesn't start with go work on how you can be more you. Maybe it starts by working on you to allow others to be more them. Stop judging others, let them be them. And maybe that will give you that boost to be you.
Well, doesn't everything start internally? I mean, if you don't like yourself too much, you're not going to like others too much. And, it's kind of getting that in order.
Well, I think it's being vulnerable about that too. You know what I mean? People don't realize when you share your weaknesses with other people, like Meg, when you shared your weaknesses with me and with everybody else, you have no idea how inspirational that is to other people. And even if it was just inspirational to one person, isn't that worth it? You know what I mean? It's like, I was talking with Sean Riley. We were driving in the car and we were talking about, he had recently lost a friend who committed suicide. And I was like, You listen, right? You have to listen and process. And then I shared, over the years, I've lost 5 friends, to suicide. And every time it happens, I ask myself, like, what could I have done? Did I miss a phone call? Was I not there for them when they needed it? How did I not see the signs? You process all this stuff. And the last time it happened was Robbie. Nobody knows Robbie. Most of you guys don't know Robbie. Probably nobody listening knows Robbie. Robbie was a penetration tester who worked at FR Secure, who took his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through that same thing, and I'm like, fuck, I hate this, And I came to the conclusion in all of processing that I think a lot of it was lack of transparency. I didn't know who Robbie was. I didn't know he had this other life. And I think you have to set the table from a leadership perspective that I will talk about anything. Maybe you will feel more comfortable talking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
I will talk about suicide. I will talk about, being molested as a child from by my uncle. I'll talk about whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, because, when you do share those things, and this should hopefully, maybe give others a little more motivation to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I've shared these things, like sharing, being molested by my uncle, the first time I shared that, it was like a men's group, and there was like 100 men there. And there were at least a dozen men who came up to me afterwards who said I was also molested as a child,
Yep.
and I've never shared it with anybody.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I mean, that's awesome, because you can't carry that fucking weight anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same thing with like all this other stuff about being real, being authentic. It's like carrying this weight with you everywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
weren't built for that. You weren't built to carry this weight. You were built to be you. So yeah, anyway, be you. I will judge you like everybody else judges you, but then I'll get to know you and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. So
Sounds
as a
good.
VCISO, being that this is the VCISO podcast, just be you, honestly. You'll find so many people that will love you just the way you are, and you'll, enjoy everything, do everything better.
And do some of those, if people haven't already, I know they're kind of cheesy, but those personality things, do any of them, do all of them, and
Mm-hmm.
figure out what your strengths are, because sometimes that's eye-opening, and then you can almost allow yourself to be you. You kind of know more about, okay, specifically, this is, I knew this about myself, but now I have like this proof, and now I know, okay, I should lean into that more,
That's super, super good. Yeah, I totally agree. The better you get to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the better other people can get to know you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is if you struggle, like if this topic has been a struggle for you to listen to, and you struggle in conversations, you struggle in social circles, whatever, then, really explore your woundedness, because I think that's kind of the root of everything, is past trauma, wounds that you harbor. That's kind of the approach that I take, is there's something wounded in my soul that is affecting me as an adult. And, you can't just pretend your way through that. You've got to dig deep.
I love it. Love it. We'll wrap it up with that. So, hey, you guys, I love you.
Love you
If you-
too, Evan.
I love.
If you're offended by that, it's not going to stop me
Yep.
from loving you. So there you go.
What kind of love? What kind of love? Agape?
Agape, spelled like agape.
Huh?
Yeah, right? There's all kinds of Greek words to learn. Take care, you guys.
All right. See ya.